Hi, welcome to HowtoDandD. My name is Fred Wheeler and today I want to talk about Dungeons & Dragons 5e. And for those of you who are unaware, this particular video is not really about hit points. It certainly is about character death. And this particular Dungeon Master guide is on character death in the Lost Mine of Phandelver. A topic that for many Dungeon Masters unfortunately winds up being something they have to deal with. It's always been the case that characters can die in the game of Dungeons & Dragons, so I've put together what is a pretty simple guide to help you figure out how you will manage character death when somebody's character dies. You are the Dungeon Master. You are running the Lost Mine of Phandelver adventure. And as a Dungeon Master, things can happen. Things that are outside of your control, things that even the players don't necessarily have control. Remember, you are playing with a 20-sided dice, so anything is possible, right? And a player's character dies during the game session. So what are you going to do? What do you do when a character dies in your adventure? And in particular, the starter set adventure, Lost Mine of Phandelver. Well, there's a few things you can do. And here are some options that I will present to you. First thing, let's start with the basics. Real simple stuff, let's not get complicated. You can just go and ask the player if they want to make another character. It could be they just want to play another character. They don't want to worry about playing the same character. They don't want to worry about raising that character from the dead or any sort of thing being captured. You don't have to go to any kind of huge lengths. This often does happen. I have found that there are players who just don't worry about it and they just move on. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Remember, if one character dies in your game, it's not the end of the world because there is more than one character usually at the table playing the game. And it's not an adventure or story about one character. It's about a group of characters usually. Okay, here's your next option. Number 2. Have the player's character knocked out rather than being dead. This is essentially being captured. They could wind up as slaves, but being captured is a common technique that is used by Dungeon Masters. All of this stuff that I'm talking about is very, very basic stuff. It's not difficult stuff at all. So for those of you who are thinking, this video is going to be way too simple for me, it's not going to produce what I want, keep sticking around, keep sticking around. Okay, number 3. And number 3 is my favourite because it just gets past all of the nonsense that rattles around in a Dungeon Master's mind. And that is, if the player wants to keep playing the same character, just let them play the same character. Don't need to go to any kind of lengths trying to figure out story-wise how that might take place and who's going to bring the character back from death and, the fact that the character lost all its hit points and should be dead, and you don't have to figure about a story reason why. You just say, it's right, you want to keep playing the same character? Cool. You playing the same character, not an issue. We'll just keep going. Now, I know a lot of people will see this and think, well, that feels like a video game. And Fred, I thought you were very much against the video game mentality. Well, I am, but there are certain things that you just don't need to sort of make your life stressful about, and that's certainly one of them, in my view. Okay, so this will get you past all the nonsense that tends to rattle around in a Dungeon Master's mind. So this is without having to come up with convoluted, involved reasons that are story, rationale, and driven that allow you to basically continue the character's journey. This will make your life so much simpler if you just use these 3 strategies. It's going to be simpler and easier, and I highly recommend using those 3 strategies and just leave it at that. Unless you are the type of person, Dungeon Master or person who feels that character death is a consequence of the player's actions and that there must always be consequences for a player's actions, even if what they did was nothing to do with really what their character did and they just happened to roll very, very low or very, very high, or something just seemed to unfold in a way that really nobody was expecting and it was kind of a surprise for everybody. So this is how you make it simple for yourself. For those of you who feel you need to make things more complicated, here we go. I'm going to give you some story reasons. So keep watching. If you do not want to do it the easy, simple way, and you want some sort of tie-in, some way of getting the characters back into the game that is story-driven, that is connected in some way to the elements of the Lost Mine of Phandelver. So who can resurrect the player's characters in this adventure? Well, actually, there's quite a few possibilities available to you as it happens. And let's start off with number one. If the players have actually saved Sildar Hallwinter, he could simply ask the Lord's Alliance to use their resources to raise the dead or use a reincarnate spell of some kind if you've got a piece of somebody left, and just bring the character back to life. Sildar does have a reputation, and therefore he's got a bit of pull, and using him for that particular purpose would make an awful lot of sense. Now, what happens if Sildar Hallwinter is still captured or dead? What do you do then? Okay, if you have a member within your party who is a member of the Lord's Alliance, a faction member, an agent of some kind, you could simply have them go and approach the Lord's Alliance, convince the faction that the importance of raising this character from death is imperative to the welfare of Phandalin. Pretty simple, just go and ask somebody. Okay, next one, number 3. A trip back to Neverwinter, and this can offer an NPC, maybe you offer something in terms of gold or wealth or a favour, maybe an item, a magic item, your equipment and gear to one of the temples. There's many temples in Neverwinter, and they will have the power to raise somebody from the dead or reincarnate them in some way. So that's another really simple way. It might take you a little while because they've got to travel from one location to the next, but that's certainly a very simple way of bringing them back into the game. Okay, so what about if you are not wanting to travel quite so far? Well, there are in fact other individuals capable of doing this sort of thing, and certainly you could make them capable of bringing back somebody from the dead. So Sister Gali, yes, it's Sister Gali, is an elf cleric of Tamora. So give her enough divine knowledge and power to cast Raise Dead, and this will be really helpful. As long as they are helpful to her and friendly, the chances are that she would be considerate, worth her while to raise them from the dead. So that is my option for number 4. Okay, what about if the other factions are involved? Well, if you've got a member who's part of a different faction, such as the Zent faction, why not just have them approach that faction and do it that way? Nice and simple. What about going and approaching somebody like Tamora? Go to the Luck Shrine and simply ask for a bit of help from her. Okay, last one. This is number 7. Okay, what about going and just visiting the ruins of Thunder Tree and check out that Redoth druid? He's got the ability possibly to cast Reincarnate. Now, he might ask them to bring an end to the dragon's reign or residence in Thunder Tree, so it might be a bit complicated, but I seem to think that this is something that the players will eventually wind up doing. So this is maybe an option to use when they're further down the adventure rather than in the early days. Okay, so what about some of the really wacky places you could go and ask people for help? Harm Cost is certainly an option, but I don't really think that the player's character necessarily wants their character coming back as an undead character, and that could cause a few complications. What if they are killed while dealing with Wave Echo Cave? Well, the chances are, if they are in Wave Echo Cave, that Nesna, the Black Spider, might not necessarily kill their character and might simply have them captured, or have access to magic that would allow him to bring them back to life so he can question them and then maybe kill them later on. What about if they have to deal with the dragon? Would the dragon kill them outright? Well, I think that the dragon probably would kill them outright, but if it did decide to keep them captive, they are probably going to find themselves in a situation that's much more complicated than they really need to consider. I don't really feel like Venom Fang is an individual who is likely to give you much quarter. Okay, what about if they are killed while dealing with the red brands in Glassstaff's hideout location? Well, Glassstaff isn't necessarily going to kill the player's characters. He might simply have them knocked out, and there may be somebody available, which you can certainly just incorporate if you want, capable of casting the spell Revivify within a minute to make sure they don't die. That way he can actually question them and find out what the heck they're up to. What about Gundren Rockseeker? Well, this is the really problematic one. Gundren Rockseeker, having the resources to help them, probably not likely. Also, too, chances are he's still been captured and they haven't actually rescued Gundren Rockseeker yet, or any of his brothers. So usually not an option to pull everybody in if you really want to. So those are the sorts of things I thought were going to be useful to you. Certainly I hope I have covered the things you had wanted me to cover. So ask your questions, give your feedback, tell me how you have dealt with death in the game of Lost Mine of Phandelver. I have used a couple of different strategies. Some have been captive, some have been, I've just incorporated them back into the game because they wanted to play and I didn't really worry about it. I was running Dungeons & Dragons Adventurers League, so there were very specific rules around dying between level 1 and 4. Most characters are very fragile at that particular point. Therefore, I don't really view players having a character die between level 1 and 4 necessarily a reflection of what they have done. And really, I think that's also beside the point. Does it really matter if they did something foolish with their character? If they played their character a particular way and that was the outcome, I don't really want them to sort of feel like, okay, the only way you can play the game is to be cautious every single time. Not every character needs to be played cautiously, otherwise it's not quite as much fun. Anyway, that's my view. Now, if you want to support the channel, you did so by watching this video. Thank you very much. I don't do Patreon, but I am considering it. Please check out the affiliate links if you're wanting to support the channel. They're down in the description. Now, share, like, and subscribe. Hit the bell button to be notified when I go live and when I publish new videos. And hey, till next time, keep rolling those 20s.